Good evening, Bills Mafia. On tonight's Air Raid Hour, we'll put a bow on the regular season finale, Bills versus Patriots, and a plotting game that took place at Gillette Stadium yesterday. And we'll take a look around the NFL to go through some of the playoff matchups going on this upcoming weekend and a quick little preview of Bills Broncos. But first,
Welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
good evening, Bills Mafia. I am your host, David Tilton at Tilt Money on X for tonight's Air Raid Hour, final regular season post-game show for the Air Raid Hour in 2024. Judge is still under the weather a bit tonight, so I'll be flying solo with you tonight, and we're going to do a little bit of a different format for tonight's post-game. Obviously, the Bills lost to the Pats yesterday in a game that really didn't mean much as far as ramifications for seeding or anything of that. Otherwise, the starters would have been playing. But there were a couple other tidbits to come out of that game, some interesting sort of incentive type stuff. But for tonight's show, we're really mainly going to kind of quickly recap what happened in the game yesterday, talk about Josh Allen's start streak, a few other things. And then we're really just going to take some time tonight to do a quick run through the NFL playoff bracket. We know that the playoff bracket is now set. The final regular season game took place last night for 2024 with the Detroit Lions beating the Minnesota Vikings. To be honest, pretty disappointed in that game. I did not think it lived up to the hype. Pretty one-sided, but we do have the playoff bracket set. The Buffalo Bills will be hosting the 7-seed Denver Broncos on Sunday at 1 p.m., a classic starting time that I think a lot of Bills fans during the regular season really appreciate, those 1 p.m. start times. So a 1 p.m. Sunday start time for the Bills in the postseason this upcoming weekend. And we'll get to that in just a few minutes. But we got Sweet Spike coming in saying, let's go. Jessica coming in said, hey, Sweet Spike, go Chargers, go Steelers. Yes. I mean, yeah, we would love to see the Steelers be able to maybe knock out the Baltimore Ravens, see the Chargers maybe knock out the Houston Texans, and so we'll just see what happens, right? But we'll go through that. I'm going to go through each game, get your thoughts on each game coming up in the wild card weekend, super wild card weekend, 3 days of football. To me, wild card weekend and divisional week, playoff weekend are the two best NFL weekends of the year. It's especially great when you're in the playoffs, and hopefully we will get it. RJ comes in and says, I think the Vikings are frauds as per usual, so I was expecting that result. Yeah, I bet on the Lions last night. I had just no reason to think that Lions team was going to lose at home when the 1 seed was on the line, when they've been in the driver's seat the whole year. I certainly trusted, as good as Sam Darnold has been, and Jefferson and Addison have been awesome this year. I trusted that Lions team at home a bit more than I trusted that Vikings team on the road. And that's really what happened. Ethan Strong says the Steelers are going to give the Ravens all they can handle. And yeah, I want to talk about that game for sure in a little bit more detail when we get to it. But first, let's just quickly, let's quickly talk a little bit about the game, the Bills game yesterday. The Bills obviously lose. Josh Allen comes in, plays for one snap to keep his consecutive start streak alive. He is now at 115 consecutive starts. He is currently the second active leader in the NFL behind Jake Matthews, who I believe has 178 or 177 straight starts. And we know Brett Favre has the record overall, which is just incredible. But Josh Allen keeps his consecutive start streak intact now at 115. And comes out of the game right away, obviously there. Mitch Trubisky throws for 100 yards, pretty good completion percentage and a touchdown to Ray Davis. But really, the Bills, quite vanilla on offense, a lot of handoffs to Ray Davis. They got James Cook his 1,000 yards and his 16th rushing TD as well, as they brought James Cook back into the game. Curtis Samuel, the line you see on the screen there, 7 catches for 52 yards, some good reps for Curtis Samuel as well coming out of that game. And I talked about a little bit in the pregame about what was going to be the plan for Curtis Samuel. Were they going to kind of try to get him some reps in this game to try to get him back in the flow of things? Because he's been banged up. He's been in and out of the lineup sort of throughout the year with minor injuries. Never really missed any significant time, but good for him to get some reps and lead the team with 7 catches yesterday. And Von Miller gets that early sack and earns that incentive for him. But you hear Von Miller talk about after the game that we have, quote, bigger fish to fry, as he's referring to the postseason ramping up. And the Von Miller revenge game narrative, right? Coming up here against his old team, the Denver Broncos. He closed out so many games for that team in his past. And man, it would be really nice if Von Miller could have a signature moment as well in that playoff game against his old team. Joe Milton for the Patriots, I thought looked pretty good. Funny enough, the Patriots, it seemed like both teams were really not trying to win that game. The Patriots do end up winning the game, which cost them the number 1 pick. I think a lot of Bills fans will be happy about that. A lot of Patriots fans may be upset about that. And then Jerod Mayo gets fired. Jerod Mayo gets fired shortly after the game ends. And whether you think it's right or wrong that he got fired, what kind of roster he was handed, there were some questionable decision-making moments from him throughout the season. I don't know. There's probably not any Pats fans watching this show tonight, but I don't know. I never felt like he felt right for the job. I don't know. Maybe he got a raw deal or not, but at the end of the day, the Patriots are going to go in a different direction. And it certainly seems like Robert Kraft kind of had his mind made up regardless of what was going to happen in that game. But obviously the Patriots now no longer getting the number 1 pick in the draft is quite funny. Ethan comes in and says, yesterday's game was a complete success as far as I'm concerned. The only bit of news, I guess, that's coming out of it that we heard today was that Brandon Codrington suffered a hamstring injury in practice. I don't know if it was in practice or out of the game. I thought I read it was in practice. I'll have to go back and double check on that. But so that's something to monitor, right? He's been really pretty stable as the Bills kick and punt returner and kick returner. I don't want to say like a major injury, because obviously there are way more things that could be major than that. But that's a pretty important injury for the Bills, who had kind of had that sort of uncertainty of the kick return and punt returner settled this year with the trade of Brandon Codrington. So hopefully he's okay. Okay, so RJ saying Codrington got hurt while playing DB. Of course, that would happen. So that's something we're going to need to monitor this week. Hopefully he's good to go, but with a hamstring injury, I don't know. Broncos do have a really good special teams unit. And so this could be a pretty big deal. Jesus comes in here with the super chat. Jesus, maybe, I'm not sure. And I really appreciate that super chat. If the Bills don't win it all, I'd like to see Ben Johnson hired as head coach and Robert Saleh as defensive coordinator. I doubt the front office would part from McDermott. I do hope McDermott proves me wrong this season, though. It's an interesting. I feel like McDermott has maybe endeared himself to some of his haters a bit more this year than. And I mean, not to say that he still doesn't have his detractors, because he does still have his detractors, but it seems like at least this year, in some of the bigger moments in games that McDermott's had, the Lions game, the Chiefs game come to mind, that he's been ready for those moments a bit more. You can talk about sort of how the end of that Rams game was handled as far as like the QB sneak and all that and using the time, whatever, right? But especially in that Lions game and even in the Chiefs game, he had a different swagger about him. And I don't know if that's going to necessarily translate into the playoffs. We will see. I would be surprised outside of something very strange happening, like the Bills get blown out by the Denver Broncos. I just don't see that there's going to be a coaching change, regardless of whether regardless of whether the Bills win the Super Bowl or not. I would not expect there to be a coaching change. That's just my belief. I could be wrong. Again, if the Bills somehow get embarrassed by the Denver Broncos and it just moves the needle the other way, this season has been, I think, a testament to the cohesiveness and the way that this overall organization has operated, the relationship between McDermott and Allen maybe improving, and kind of those guys really kind of allowing each other to be themselves a bit, if that's the way to put it. I just would be very surprised if we see a coaching change at this point. Yep, and Cooper not with the team still for personal reasons. McDermott mentioned that he hopes he'll be back at some point this week. We don't really know what's going on with Amari Cooper. And then on another player's front, no update yet on Terrell Bernard and his status for the game this upcoming weekend. But there was no different news. Alex Brasky, I think, asked McDermott today about that. No additional news than what we already knew, which was that we hope that Terrell Bernard's trending in the right direction to play in this game. And for a team like the Denver Broncos, who runs a lot of screens and is very successful at running screens, they do use it a lot. Terrell Bernard will be critical to have back in this game for not just his, after the snap ability to kind of chase things down, but for his pre-snap communication and kind of getting those guys ready to go and in the right positions is going to be really important against this Denver Broncos team, who does like to use the short passing game, loves to use the screen game with the running backs, McLaughlin, Javonte Williams, both really good receivers as running backs. So yes, it'd be good to get that news, hopefully. Ethan says, interesting about Buffalo Joe performed yesterday pretty well. Led the team in tackles yesterday, 10 total tackles for Buffalo Joe, made some nice plays. The Bills, actually, to their credit, they did a pretty decent job against the Patriots running game. The Patriots only ran for 2.6 yards per carry, with Antonio Gibson mainly being the ball carrier there with his 12 carries for 41 yards. Gibson had been averaging close to 5 yards a carry. I think he was around 4.7, 4.8 on the season. So holding him to under 4 was a pretty nice effort by that Bills unit led by Buffalo Joe Andreessen. So again, a nice game from him. I think pretty vanilla effort on both sides of the ball, again, as far as just going out there and playing sort of stock coverages, some stock offensive plays, nothing crazy. And Ethan asks, what the hell happened to Stevenson? Well, 2 weeks ago against the Chargers, he was benched in favor of Antonio Gibson. Jerod Mayo, that was a coach's decision he made. And then I guess that kind of carried over into week 18, where, Stevenson wasn't going to play. Now, who knows what will happen with a new regime, if Stevenson will kind of get another chance, but it's certainly, he certainly had a decent year considering how bad the Patriots offense was, almost 800 yards for him on the ground, a pretty decent year for Ramondre Stevenson, a handful of touchdowns as well. So one of their better options and a reliable option. So his fumbling issues, I think, are really what cost him these last few weeks as far as starting. RJ comes in and says, how poorly Hamlin performed has me concerned, less so with Hamlin because he was off, but Rapp looked bad. Yeah, the touchdown to Keyshawn Boutte, I mean, that Rapp got a little lost on that one. I know he's been back, but also Taylor Rapp has missed reps as well. So again, I'm I'm concerned because I do think maybe not necessarily against the Denver Broncos, but against other teams. Like, we've counted on turnovers. We've counted on, and Taylor Rapp has made some nice plays this year, by the way, going all the way back to early in the season. I think people are still a little bit concerned about what this ceiling of this safety unit will be in the playoffs come time to go against some of these teams that have, pretty good receiving units. Now, the interesting thing about the Denver Broncos is I think, sneakily have probably maybe one of the most threatening receiving units that the Bills potentially could face in the playoffs, right? We think about the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, Zay Flowers, Xavier Worthy. I get that for those two teams. But between Marvin Mims and Cortland Sutton and Vele and Troy Franklin, Sutton can be a problem. Christian Benford will likely be matched up with him for most of the day. But the Bills team struggled with big physical receivers. They struggled with Puka Nacua. I don't think Sutton is necessarily as smooth in his ability to kind of cut and run routes as a guy like Nacua, but he's a big body down the field guy who can really match up with a guy like Christian Benford and physically go toe to toe with him. So we'll see kind of what happens with that. I'm not aware of any Cortland Sutton injury. I see Chris mentioning it in the comment section. I'm not aware of a Cortland Sutton injury, but yeah, I'm not really seeing any news on that. So I'm not aware of him being injured at all. So I'm not sure about that. So yeah, I guess that puts a bow on the Bills regular season for 2024. I had the Bills at 11-6. They went 13-4, 2 games better than my prediction. They won the division, which I think Judge and I both predicted they would do that, but a really impressive season for this team in the regular season. But as we know, what will a lot of people remember? Yes, we'll enjoy the success of this season, an MVP caliber run from QB1, Josh Allen. We'll see if that actually translates to him winning the award. I'm kind of over talking about it, but hopefully he does and gets that recognition. But a really strong season once again for the Bills, 5th straight year winning the AFC East. And now it comes to the playoffs, right? Where this team, because of the success they've now had in the regular season and because of the success that they've had with Josh Allen as the quarterback and Sean McDermott as the head coach, are now going to be judged by largely what they do in the postseason. We've transitioned officially. I mean, it's been a while now, but people will talk about the drought and sort of let's be happy that where we are. And yes, we are happy that we are a good team now. But the critics and the judges will now base and remember potentially whether or not this Bills team could get it done in the postseason. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the Bills have to win a Super Bowl this year. But I do think that the Bills, with Josh Allen as their quarterback, really, if they don't win a Super Bowl with Josh Allen as their quarterback, will look back and say that was a missed opportunity. Lower expectations for the Bills to start the season. I think expectations have now ramped up going into this postseason. They're the 2 seed once again. And so I would say that expectations at the onset of the season maybe were lower, but now have creeped their way back up again. And yes, while maybe some people at the beginning of the season didn't expect us to be in this position, the Bills to be in this position, the way they've played this year and the MVP caliber season that Josh Allen has had, this offensive line, James Cook, getting the contributions from auxiliary players and the trades for Amari Cooper, seeing Khalil Shakir's rise, seeing Dorian Williams play improve, seeing Greg Rousseau sort of emerge as one of the top edge players in the league, Von Miller having a resurgence. There is expectation now, once again, in the postseason, and the Bills looking around saying, hey, look, the Chiefs were 14-2, but we beat them in the regular season. Maybe we can get some revenge on the Baltimore Ravens. The AFC playoff bracket is really there, not necessarily for the Bills for the taking, but there is an opportunity for the Bills to do damage in the playoffs this year. So I'm certainly hoping that the Bills can make a deep run into the playoffs this year, and I think as long as Josh Allen's the quarterback and the way that he's played this year, you saw the efficiency, limiting the turnovers, then the Bills have as good a chance maybe as anybody to win the Super Bowl this year. So let's see. Obviously, the team's going to take it one game at a time, and we'll do our official pregame show for the Denver Broncos matchup on Sunday morning. But I guess that's a good segue now to start to kind of talk about the rest of the playoff bracket. And Ethan comes in and says, this was an awesome regular season, especially going in the year thinking I think we'd be in a dogfight. I never thought the Jets were going to be real, but the Finns imploding shocked me. Jerod, I'm not getting any younger for the one before I die, and I'm with you there. Even since the Ravens loss was nowhere near as bad as it looked on the scoreboard, which was funny to say. Bring them to Western New York and see how that goes. And as we start to we'll go in order here and kind of talk about each of these games, and that'll kind of be how we kind of proceed through the rest of the show tonight, doing something a little bit different. So let's start with the first game on the schedule, which is Saturday. This upcoming Saturday at 4:30, you have the Chargers visiting the Texans. The Chargers have looked really good of late. They absolutely dismantled the Patriots. They beat the Raiders, I would say, fairly easily. They have played really well. Justin Herbert looks good. J.K. Dobbins is back from his injury. Lad McConkey has really been having a great sort of under-the-radar rookie season because of all the other rookies that have had amazing years like Malik Neighbors and Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix, Brock Bowers. But Lad McConkey himself is having really a fantastic season, set the Chargers rookie receiving records. And so we have the Chargers going into Houston at 4:30 on Saturday. Houston, yes, they did just beat the Titans to kind of end the regular season, but they've been kind of wavering a bit, I would say. Maybe not as strong of a team as they were early in the season. They obviously lost both Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs to major knee injuries. So they're going into the postseason with Joe Mixon, Nico Collins, CJ Stroud leading the way. That defense led by Will Anderson still very good, can get to the passer. CJ Stroud's been sacked a ton this year. So that Chargers team, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how that Chargers team kind of goes in. Their defense really started the year out super hot. They were one of the best defenses in the league to start the year. And then they kind of went through a little bit of a lull in the middle of the season. But the last couple weeks, I think, have kind of found their groove again. And they're playing well. They're sixth in the NFL in sacks this year with 46 sacks. So that's an interesting matchup to see how that Houston Texans offensive line will fare in protecting CJ Stroud against that Chargers front. Jim Harbaugh against D'Amico Ryan's a fun coaching matchup as well. So I kind of like the Chargers on the road in that one, but that one I could see going either way. I think the way those teams are playing right now, I could see the Chargers going into Houston and winning that game. So that's the first matchup on the docket. The second matchup is another AFC game on Saturday evening on Prime. We've got the Steelers at the Ravens, third time those teams will be playing this year. The Steelers, one of the few teams that has been able to kind of at times contain Lamar Jackson. Now, the last time these two teams played right before Christmas, the Ravens really had their way with the Steelers, although the Steelers offense was able to move the ball against that Ravens team. The Ravens did get a defensive touchdown in that game, and Lamar, obviously the other major MVP candidate, had a good game. And this one's interesting because the Steelers have been tough against the Ravens. Divisional foes playing in the postseason is always interesting to me. And I think this comment from Cespinar is interesting. If Steelers Raven hits the under, it's probably Ravens losing, and that's going to be TJ Watt and co. trying to contain Lamar Jackson, trying to contain Derrick Henry. The Steelers, they don't have necessarily the same. They're not like necessarily a huge sack outfit, but they are a good defense. And from a points per game basis, eighth best in the NFL this year, allowing 20 points per game, allowing under 100 rushing yards per game this year. It's going to be a tall order against Derrick Henry and co., but seventh best rushing defense in the league this year. They have a chance now. They did just lose to the Bengals. They kind of limped into the postseason, losing to the Bengals, losing to the Chiefs on Christmas, obviously losing to the Ravens right before Christmas. So the Steelers are kind of, they are limping in a bit to the postseason, but I think Mike Tomlin, with his experience in the postseason, they will have a chance, even though they are going into the postseason as on a 4-game losing streak. They have as good a chance of anyone, I think, in beating the Ravens just because of that familiarity right there. So yeah, I think interesting that we have two AFC games to open up the playoffs on Saturday. Then we get to the Sunday games, 1:00. That's our matchup. Broncos at Bills. We'll do a proper pregame on Sunday, obviously, but talk a little bit about the Broncos and their screen game, and that worries me a little bit. The Bills have not been good at defending the screen this year. The Broncos have been one of the better screen teams in the NFL. Cortland Sutton, we mentioned, I think could give the Bills some problems. That Broncos defense can really get to the passer. Nick Bonito, one of our draft favorites, having probably an all-pro or close to all-pro caliber season. The Broncos lead the NFL in sacks, and it's not particularly close. So they had 63 sacks as a team. Just a huge number. The next closest team was the Ravens with 54. So they can get to the passer. And Josh Allen has been great at not taking sacks this year. And I think that's going to be one of the key matchups is the Bills' offensive line against the Denver Broncos pass rush. Can the Bills' offensive line hold up? Can the Bills protect Josh Allen like they have all year? And hopefully, not the Denver Broncos not create negative plays for the Buffalo Bills offense, which could be, a big factor in whether the Broncos really truly have a chance to come out of that game with a win as far as being an 8.5 point underdog. I mean, the Broncos have the third best rush defense in the league as well, as far as from a yards per game standpoint. So very good defense. It will be a test for the Bills, but we'll save most of that preview for Sunday morning, not to give too much away there. Following the 1:00 game, we've got the 4:30 Packers at Eagles. We finally get an NFC matchup. It takes the fourth game of the Wild Card weekend before we get the first NFC matchup. This pits my wife's Green Bay Packers at the Philadelphia Eagles. A rematch of a game earlier from this year that the Eagles did win. Eagles rested their starters in Week 18, so no Saquon in Week 18, no rushing record for him. The Eagles will come into this game, hopefully having Jalen Hurts back from his concussion, and they'll obviously have Saquon for that game. A really tough matchup for the Packers to go on the road into Philly again and try to come out of that game with a win. Josh Jacobs has been phenomenal this year for the Green Bay Packers, but the Packers haven't been as sharp of late. They obviously lost to the Vikings. They lost a couple weeks ago. They lost to the Bears on that game-winning field goal yesterday. But a team, I think that it would not surprise me if you see a higher seed team lose if it's the Green Bay Packers beating the Philadelphia Eagles. But I just don't know how, I just don't know how much they're going to be able to hang with that Eagles offense. The Packers, to their credit, have been one of only 8 teams to hold teams under 100 yards per game on the ground. So if they can contain Saquon, maybe they'll have a chance. But it's going to be a tall order, I think, to see the Packers go into Philadelphia and pull that one out. That's the 4:30 game following the Bills game. And then finally, Sunday evening on NBC Peacock, you've got one of the most exciting matchups, I think, of Wild Card Weekend. You got the Jaden Daniels led and Dan Quinn led Washington Commanders going into Tampa Bay to play Baker Mayfield and the 3-seeded Tampa Bay Bucks, who won the NFC South by beating the New Orleans Saints yesterday. Atlanta Falcons lose to the Carolina Panthers. Mike Evans gets his 1,000 yards. We know that. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers also benefited from the Los Angeles Rams losing to the Seattle Seahawks, which we're going to talk about that in a second because the Rams matchup is the last matchup of the week. But the Bucks get the 3 seed because the Rams lose. The Rams essentially kind of conceding the 3 seed to the Tampa Bay Bucks. So the Bucks get to play at home against the Commanders. Now, the Rams would have had their home game either way, but now they have to play the Minnesota Vikings at home. But Commanders, Bucks, Daniels and Mayfield, Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, those running backs from Tampa Bay, Bucky Irving, Rashad White, and you got Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler on the other side with Washington. 2 defensive-minded coaches and Dan Quinn and Todd Bowles going against each other, but it's the story of this game, or these 2 offenses between the Commanders and the Bucks. It's going to be a super fun game. I'm really, really hoping that the Bills win at 1 and then, the Packers win for my wife's sake, but hoping the Bills win at 1 and then really can enjoy this Sunday night game at 8 between the Commanders and Bucks. Really looking forward to that one. So super excited about that. And then we finally wrap up Wild Card Weekend on Monday night with the Vikings, after their loss to the Lions to wrap up the regular season, going into LA to play the Rams, as the Vikings are the 5 seed, going to the Rams as the 4 seed. And again, Sean McVay deciding to rest his starters, knowing that they had at worst the 4 seed locked up. They knew they were going to win the division, so they knew they were going to get a home game. Sean McVay saying basically he didn't care if the Rams were going to have to play the Vikings or the Commanders, or maybe even the Lions. Had the Vikings won last night, the Lions would have gone into LA to play the Rams. And to me, that was an interesting decision by Sean McVay to essentially concede that game. Now, I do think the Rams match up well with the Vikings. The Rams actually beat the Vikings earlier in the year, and they will have, Kyren and Puka and Cooper Kupp and their full allotment of guys ready to go for that game. And Sean McVay in the playoffs is not scared of anybody. So I do give the Rams a pretty good fighting chance to come away with a win in that game. I did not think the Vikings looked all that impressive against the Lions. I thought Sam Darnold, for as good as he's been this year, and he has been good, it seemed like a reversion to like the Jets Sam Darnold that we saw last night. And I know that was a tough game, and I know that Lions defense is tough, but I think the Rams really do have a fighting chance to win that game to wrap up Wild Card Weekend at home against the Vikings, and could see the Minnesota Vikings, who have had some tough playoff losses in the past with Kirk Cousins, having another potentially tough out in the playoffs again, losing to the Lions to kind of lose the 1 seed, drop down to the 5, and then potentially going into LA and losing to the Sean McVay-led Rams. That should be a good game. I think it'll be close. My favorite matchup, though, of course, other than the Bills-Broncos, is that Commanders-Tampa Bay game. I think that's going to be interesting. And then obviously be rooting for the Steelers to beat the Ravens on Saturday. So we'll see what happens there. As far as the Chargers-Texans game, don't really have a preference. I think the Chargers have a good chance to win that game, but some good matchups in this one. I don't think there's really a bad matchup on the slate, which is kind of nice. In the past, we've kind of got some maybe not so great matchups on Wild Card Weekend, but I do like all of these games. So, yeah, that's around the league. Awards will be, I think, the week before the Super Bowl will be announced. So everyone waiting to see whether Josh Allen's going to win that MVP award. We will see. And Randy says, Vikings really got exposed last night. I agree. Darnold looked like his earlier versions. Yeah. I don't disagree with that. And so now we wait, nervously, maybe excited, all the things, and just a few like quick last notes here before we wrap up the show tonight. We'll be on for our pregame show. Judge will be back. He's feeling better, but wasn't feeling good enough to come on tonight. 8 a.m. Sunday morning, we'll have our pregame show as we typically do, previewing the Bills and the Broncos wildcard matchup. We will have our normal Monday night show at 9, although I need to talk to Judge to see if we want to maybe pre-record for that or do something else, given that the other wild card game's on. Not that it's a huge deal because it's the NFC game, but right now we're still planning, obviously, to have the show on Monday night, the normal air raid slot, reacting to what happens in that Bills-Broncos game on Sunday at 1 p.m. So enjoy this week leading up to Wild Card Weekend, everybody. Thank you for joining me tonight and bearing with me as I kind of flew solo here tonight without Judge. And I do really appreciate everyone joining in and adding those comments in tonight. Another wrap on the regular season, and now we're on to the postseason. So it's going to be fun. We'll enjoy it. Go Bills and all of that. And so hopefully, hopefully it's a fun Sunday. And as Nikki says, the Broncos were the best draw we could have asked. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's the best draw we could have asked for. I think they have the best defense of any of the teams that we maybe potentially could have been playing. So I don't love that. But I certainly would have not minded to see Miami again. That would have been my preference. And honestly, the Bengals, people were kind of scared of them. I think I would have been fine playing them too, honestly, because their defense really hasn't been that good either this year. So we'll see. Broncos have a great defense. Bo Nix looks like he's going to be the dude for Denver for the foreseeable future. He's had a really great year. If it wasn't for Jaden Daniels and a couple of these other studs like Neighbors and Bowers, like Bo Nix would probably be in the conversation for Rookie of the Year. So we'll see how it goes, and let's just hope it's a win at the end of the day. But that'll do it for me tonight. Tilt here signing off, and appreciating you all in the comment section. And until next time, go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comment section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!